This edition of Big Ten Today brought to you by CDW. Glad to have you with us in our Chicago studios. My name is Mike Hall. We got a fun hour coming your way, and for one reason mainly, and one reason only, Big Daddy Meach is here. Hello, Trent Meacham. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. Great to be here with you, Mike. You know, what are we? End of February. It's brutally cold outside, but man, this is really the time of the season where teams start to separate themselves, propel themselves for March runs. So I love the basketball I'm seeing now.
Yeah, it's a great time to be watching these games because every team at every level has something they're fighting for, whether it is to win the Big Ten or to try to get a double bye in the upcoming Big Ten tournament or to try to make the Big Ten tournament. We had a little bit of all of those options in last night's games, but let's start off with our big story, which was what happened when two teams ranked in the top 15 met up, Michigan State and Purdue. The Spartans got the win at home, 75-66. They forced turnovers. They got points off turnovers. They had 76 dunks, it felt like, which would be weird because they had only 75 points, but it sure felt that way at least. The alley-oops were coming left and right. And after the victory, here's what the head coaches had to say.
I thought we did do some good things. Jeremy threw a couple great ones, and then Trey threw a couple good ones, and then that one Jace threw at the end too. But I always tell my guys, it's not fair when you throw lobs to Cohen, because hell, I could throw a lob to Cohen and he could dunk it. You don't even doesn't even have to be close to perfect. But Jace threw a hell of a lob to him. I don't know what caused it, but fast break baskets mean a lot. Indiana got some against us. We got some today.
We can't go on the road and give up 10 dunks, and that's what they did. Our main focus was to keep them out of the paint and not let the ball get in there, and that's exactly what they did. But easier said than done. Hats off to them.
Yeah, that's the thing. It felt like that watching it, Trent. It felt like every possession was a dunk or an alley-oop. I mean, that one that Jace had where he threw up there, you were like, oh, that's not a great lob. That's about a foot and a half too high for – oh, no, Cohen Carr's got it. Okay, all right, how about that?
Man, this team is humming right now. Mike, I was courtside against their game against Illinois and Champaign on Saturday night, and to see their toughness, their togetherness – how Coach Izzo is playing 10 players here in late February. You don't see that very often, but everyone who steps on the court, they play their role, they play to their strengths, and it's so impressive. Those 2 point guards last night, Holloman and Fears, 12 assists, 1 turnover. You got Akins, you got Carr, you got Fiddler now running the lanes, full speed. The bigs are playing well. We saw Kohler with a big game against the Illini, and last night, 8 players with 7+ points. Your leading scorer has 12 points. You just don't see it happen very much, but man, they are so tough and they're relentless. And they're relentless in how they sprint the floor, how they curl off the down screens, how the point guards snake the ball screens. They're always playing inside out, and it just wears on you. You saw it on Saturday night against Illinois. You saw it last night against Purdue. Those second halves, they just seem to just extend those leads because they're relentless and playing 10 guys. It's really impressive. I think we thought Michigan State was maybe faltering. Lost, I believe, 3 out of 4. They had this tough end of the season stretch, and now they're looking like one of the toughest teams out there and playing really good basketball.
Well, you mentioned something I wanted to get to, which is the leading scorer thing with Michigan State has been fascinating me for weeks. We're going to get to games later where Wisconsin beat Illinois with John Tonje scoring 31. We're going to get to Minnesota beating UCLA with Dawson Garcia scoring 32. You mentioned it. Their leading scorer for Michigan State in this game was 12 points. I did the math this morning. 9 times Michigan State has had a leading scorer have less than 15 points. 12 times this year they've had 15 points or less as their leading scorer. There are games where one player has a breakout performance, but Trent, it's pretty rare. I mean, the concept of having 8 guys score between 7 and 12, it's happening almost every game, it feels like. What does that say to you?
Well, it reminds me, Mike, of if you watch the highest level in Europe of EuroLeague teams, typically guys don't play over 20, 25 minutes. They play, their schedule, they'll play 9, 10 players. And the professional approach of these college guys, I know they might be pros now, but their approach, understanding who they are as a basketball player, what they do well, and doing those things, executing, cheering on your teammate when it's another guy's night, you just don't see that very often. So give so much credit to this culture that Tom Izzo has built, how this team has improved throughout the course of the season. But it rarely happens, especially at this point in the season, playing the caliber of teams that they're playing. And I've been so impressive. Like it helps how they play defensively and just how physical, how aggressive they are. I thought they were so good on that end of the floor last night, taking Fletcher Loyer out of the game. So they're committed on that end of the floor. Then they get out in transition, 21 fast break points last night. They generate 10 steals. So it starts there. It starts rebounding. Everybody's bought in there. But then offensively, they're playing to their strengths. They're playing together. And when you see a team doing that, it's a lot of fun to watch.
So that brings us to the Boilermakers, who have done something you almost never see. They've lost 3 games in a row. They haven't done that since 5 years ago. Now, Bruce Weber last night was pointing out the fact that earlier this year they lost 3 out of 4 in December, and all they did was come right back and win 11 of their next 12 games. So it would be kind of foolish to push a panic button here. But what do you think about the fact that they've now lost 3 in a row?
I think it's a long season, and I agree with Coach Weber. Are there some things they need to do better? Yes, they got to defend the ball better. They got to keep the ball out of the paint much better. Braden Smith needs help. Him and Trey Carpenter, they need some help. Some other guys to step up consistently. So they can do some things better. The sky's not falling, though. This is a good team. You have 2 of the best players in the conference, in the country that you can play through. I think they just need to get back to the drawing board, get back to practice. Some guys need to get their confidence back. You need C.J. Cox. We saw Kim Heide knock down a couple threes. You're going to need some guys to make some shots. So much focus, so much attention is on Braden Smith now. So can other guys find those spots, take advantage of them, and knock down shots? That will be big for them moving forward.
They got 3 games, 3 teams ahead of them in their hunt for first place, but they've got 4 games left, none of them against ranked teams, so they're not quite out of the Big Ten title hunt just yet. Wisconsin is a team that believes it is still in the Big Ten title hunt. They had a big win against Illinois, 95-74. I mean, they just smoked them. I mentioned John Tonje. That's back-to-back games now. He's scored 30 points plus. Stephen Crowell had an all-around game, 5 assists, 7 rebounds, 20 points. Now, we should point out Illinois did not have Morez Johnson. He's hurt with broken wrist. Tomislav Ivasic had to play through illness, which has been a huge problem in this Illinois team. Jake Davis was playing through illness as well. This is still nowhere near 100% on an Illinois team. I'm going to get to that in a second, but let's start off with this Wisconsin team, which is scoring like crazy. They're averaging 82 points a game. They haven't scored this well in 55 years. What is it like watching them play?
Well, their execution is really impressive. Mike, how they space the floor. They'll lift the floor a lot, meaning all 5 or at least 4 players will be maybe free throw line extended up. So that opens up the baseline. And then they're running a ton of empty side ball screens. So meaning there's a ball screen or dribble handoff on one wing of the floor. And then the other 3 players, which this doesn't happen as much with most other teams, are on the far other side of the court. And that just makes those rotations really difficult on your defenses. And also when all 5 guys on the court can shoot the 3. Stephen Crowell hit some last night. Carter Gilmore, Amos comes in and knocks down 3s. Nolan Winter can shoot the 3. So all your bigs shoot the 3. Your guards are playing well. I mean, just offensively, this is a really gifted team. They're experienced. They play well together. But I really like their spacing. It's different from what you see from most other teams. And then when you think about Illinois, they like to help out really heavy off 1 or 2 of their bigs. You'll even see them put Ben Hummerkaus, even Tommy Ivasic was playing against Jeremy Fears on Saturday night, helping out in the paint. They can't do that against Wisconsin because they're spacing their skill. And, man, they are so efficient. Their splits last night, 52 from the field, 42 from 3. They get to the free throw line. So they're playing so well. And I haven't even mentioned John Tonje, who is just a straight-up bucket, 30 points for a second consecutive game. He's playing at such a high level. They're just it's beautiful basketball right now for Wisconsin.
63 points the last 2 games for John Tonje, making a late push for Big Ten Player of the Year for the Badgers. As for the orange and blue, I mentioned everybody is sick, and it's been that way for more than 2 weeks. Now, they're not alone. There are teams across the country, as you all know, with little kids. Everybody's getting sick right now. This has been a brutal month of February for people, whether you're an athlete or not. But it was so bad that at the end of the game, Underwood went up to Greg Gard and said, hey, I don't think you want us to shake your hands right now because our whole team is sick. So out of human decency, let's just avoid the handshake line. And they didn't. People didn't know what was going on. There was some social media concern about was there arguments. No, he was being a kind person in there. But to the point, Trent, he was doing that because their whole team is still fighting something.
Yeah, I mean, I got to laugh a little bit. They've been hugging and wrestling and grappling for 2 hours before that, on the court together. But I do understand it, and it's really unfortunate if you're not whole, whether it's injury, whether it's sickness, because that's what you want. You want to be at full strength and give your best shot, and they have not been there the last several weeks. I actually think the bigs missing them is even more significant than if they were to miss a guard. I think Ivicic is probably their most important player, because he's their backstop defensively. They can play through him in the post, in the mid-post. He can stretch the floor offensively. And this has been dragging on the longest with him having, had mono and now the flu or something else going on. So that's really unfortunate. The hope is that we're still in February. Can they get right and be healthy to make a run in March? Because this team does have the pieces. I think Kasparas Giacochonis has got to play better. 0 assists, 7 turnovers last night. He's got to take care of the ball much better. Good to see Dre Gibbs-Lawhorn, who was sick, and he kind of busted out a little bit last night with 17 points. So that's a good sign. Hummerkaus made some shots, but unfortunate being under the weather. But they do have the depth, especially on the perimeter, to be a competitive team. So hopefully they get healthy moving forward, because they got Duke on Saturday. Big matchup in Madison Square Garden.
That's right. A few days off until they take on the highly ranked Blue Devil team in New York City. And then they got Iowa, at Michigan, and against Purdue. So they, like you said, the timing is okay, right? You don't want this coming in 3 weeks. So they can get this out of their system with a few games to go until the Big Ten tournament. Illini fans can feel better about the fact that they've lost 6 of their last 10 games. Now, the big surprise of the night came from Minnesota taking on UCLA. This was out west. The Gophers won 64-61. Lakai Patterson hit a layup with 8 seconds left. That turned out to be the game winner. Dawson Garcia had 27 points in the second half alone. And Minnesota wins both games on the road against LA schools. Here's Garcia afterwards.
It really just goes to show anybody can step up on our team. And that showed. Last game, it was a lot of guys, and this game, they were able to find me down the stretch, and we were able to pull through. So just proud of this team.
I was going to ask you about that. Obviously not your normal production against USC, only 7 points. How motivated were you to come back out tonight and get back to your usual self?
Super motivated, just because I know, I'm my best when my back is against the wall. So excited to get back out here and compete. And UCLA is a hell of a team. They play super tough and physical, so hats off to them as well.
How much are you guys talking about? We were talking about it during the broadcast about getting to the Big Ten tournament and not being in the bottom 3. This win, obviously, and the win against USC, obviously goes a long way for you guys being able to be in that tournament.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's been our talk. We want to go as far as we can possibly go. And so our locker room is, our goals are on the highest goals possible for us.
How about this end of the game? Minnesota goes on an 11-2 run, Trent, to take their first lead of the game in the closing minutes on the road against UCLA.
That game was somewhat of a picture of their season, Mike. I mean, this team was dead in the water. They did not look like a Big Ten team. They didn't look like, a mid-major team maybe early in the season. Just did not think they had the pieces. So give their coaching staff so much credit. Give those players a ton of credit for their resiliency to just stick with it. Keep showing up every day with the things that you need to do. And then to have that second half, I mean, obviously led by Dawson Garcia, who was just unstoppable at all 3 levels of the floor, to the basket, the 3, mid-range, free throw line. He was so good. And then it was really impressive when you think of Lakai Patterson to step up at the end of the game and make those big plays. typically you have a guy rolling like Garcia. Yes, you want to get him the ball. He made that game winner earlier in the season from half court. But to still have the belief in yourself that I'm going to go make a play if it's there. So Garcia did everything, especially that second half. He tied UCLA, their point total. They just couldn't score the ball, couldn't make free throws. And then for Patterson to step up there at the end, that go-ahead layup, made another big bucket the play before. I believe he was defensively, drew that foul on Sebastian Mack as well on UCLA's last possession. So some big plays down the stretch for Patterson to complement Dawson Garcia's big-time night.
Yeah, you mentioned UCLA couldn't hit free throws. They were 9 of 19. That's 47% from the free throw line at home. You can't win games doing that, but you can if you get comebacks. And so that's back-to-back games. Minnesota was down 14 points or more on the road at different LA schools. I mean, you mentioned the microcosm of the season. Not only did a few weeks ago it seem like Minnesota wasn't going to make the Big Ten tournament, it was a lock seemingly. Now, I mean, my goodness, they've won 3 of their last 4, 6 of their last 9. They've become a team that people don't really want to see on the schedule.
The next 2 games, Penn State and Northwestern at home, I believe. So definitely winnable games. No games a gimme by any means, but they're playing well. Defensively, they're getting after it. They're connected on that end of the floor. When you have a player like Garcia that you can lean on and play through on the offensive end, that really helps. But some of these guards are playing well. You know, you need other guys to step up and knock down shots. That's happened, and it could be Mitchell, it could be Patterson. We've seen Odukale. We've seen different guys step up at different moments. So this is a good Big Ten basketball team right now. I'm almost shocked to say that based on where they were in December, but give them so much credit in how they've developed over the course of the season. That's not easy. It's easy to hang your head. It's easy when you lose games, you drop some tough ones, you go back to that Ohio State game, and for just it to go south. And they went a different direction at that point in the season. Been so impressive, and I'm looking forward to see how they finish off this slate. And I think we will see them in the Big Ten tournament and see what they can do there.
Yeah, 5 games left, but like you said, the next 2 are at home against 2 teams that are near the bottom of the conference standings. All right, a lot more to come on this show. Men's basketball on the Big Ten Network tonight. Triple header for you. It all starts off 6:30 Eastern, 5:30 Central Time. You got Nebraska and Penn State. Then Oregon at Iowa and Rutgers at Washington to close it out. We got a special tip-off show to lead you into it. We got a post-game show afterwards. Just spend your whole evening with us at the Big Ten Network. And why should you do it? Because here's a look at the Big Ten standings. Remember, the top 15 teams will make the Big Ten tournament. So that means the bottom 3 teams, which right now would be Washington, Northwestern, and Penn State, would be left out of the Big Ten tournament. This is the first time ever that we will have that, because, of course, it's the first time ever there are 18 teams. Now, you notice Rutgers is just above Washington in those standings, and these teams are meeting up today. So, Trent, very simply, this is an easy one to see why this game matters for those 2 programs, because they're both trying to earn their way into the Big Ten tournament in a couple weeks.
Yeah, nobody wants to be done and not have the opportunity to compete in Indianapolis on that stage. Always such a great event. So this will be interesting. You know, Rutgers has lost 3 straight. Now Washington has won 3 of 5. I wouldn't call them quite as maybe not playing quite as well as Minnesota, who we just talked about, but I have been very impressed with how they've developed over the course of the season. I even think about their last game against Penn State. Great Osobor, only 6 points, but he had 13 rebounds, 10 assists. Not sure how he missed a triple-double off the points. But they have different guys playing well. Tyler Harris has been pretty consistent. Zoom Diallo has been, especially as a freshman point guard, he's been consistent. They've been good defensively. They got some good length. So they've been playing well, and they've developed into a good Big Ten basketball team as well. This is not going to be an easy one for Rutgers, Mike. It seems like this season, similar to Illinois a little bit. Obviously, they're at the bottom of the standings, but just can't get right from a health standpoint. And unfortunately for them, it's been their stars in Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey. So I'd love to see them round into form, because if they're both on, they can beat anybody. And just unfortunately for basketball fans, that hasn't been the case for most of the season. So let's see what they can do here to wrap up the season, because those guys are as talented as we've seen in the Big Ten. And if they can't be healthy, playing loose and free, watch out for Rutgers to finish the year.
Yeah, as you see, the threes for neither of them are falling. The free throws are barely even coming for both of them, as Rutgers has been struggling. We mentioned earlier in the show that Minnesota had been playing some really good ball. How about Nebraska? This is a Cornhusker team that's now won 5 of their last 6 games. Again, perhaps peaking at the right time. 5 games left. Only one of them is against a ranked team. One of those that's not ranked is their opponent today, a Penn State team that's struggling.
Yeah, I really like how Nebraska's playing. This was a team that they lost several games in a row, and you got to give them a lot of credit. I think Fred Hoiberg's his composure, his demeanor over the course of a long season, I think has been really good for this ball club. They have experience. Bryce Williams, when you have a guy, you have a go-to. They may not have a true point guard, but they have a true go-to guy in Bryce Williams. He's played at such a high level. Their last game against Northwestern, down 20 in the second half, and to come back and win. Williams made all the plays down the stretch. They're solid defensively, and then offensively, despite not having your traditional point guard, they've done it by committee. Sam Hoiberg comes in, and he plays well. Obviously, Bryce Williams, the ball's in his hands a lot. Even their big men, they'll have them at the top of the key, running dribble handoffs, and have done a pretty good job taking care of the ball. Esijan shot it really well off the bench, and he's a big-time threat when he comes off the bench. And then Juwan Gary, Mike, has been very consistent, playing at a high level, all Big Ten level. So this team is just their experience. They execute well, and they do it on both ends of the floor. Fred Hoiberg's done a great job with this group this season.
And they're taking on a Nittany Lion team that, again, has struggled. They've lost 7 consecutive games. Our last game to get to is Iowa and Oregon. The Ducks went through a phase where they were struggling. They lost 5 in a row, but they've won back-to-back since then, Trent.
They're back-to-backs, Mike, at home against Rutgers, who has not been playing well, and at home against a depleted Northwestern. So this is a team, they have a lot of pieces, Mike. I don't know if they have a true point guard. And look, Jackson Shellstad has been playing really well. He can shoot it. He's got elite speed. But they don't have one player that's averaging over 3 assists a game. So in terms of who's setting the table for this group, I think that's been an experience throughout the course of the season. TJ Bamba has played better and has been a bit of a distributor. So that's a good sign for them. Nate Biddle went through a little bit of a lull there, and he's been playing better as late. So this is a group. They do have a lot of experience. They have a lot of weapons. I'm still kind of waiting for them to put it together. And so we'll see. Even, I mentioned, yes, those 2 wins were against 2 teams at the bottom, but we'll see if that can kind of get them going. They go on the road, Iowa. This is an important one for them. And then they're on the road at Wisconsin. So this road swing will be really big. If they can get 1 or 2 of these, that would set them up really well heading into March.
Iowa in the Big Ten tournament, but it's close. In their last game, of course, defense need not apply. They gave up 101 points the last time they were on the court. All right, Maryland has been a team. Well, Derik Queen's last 4 games, you've seen a marked improvement. Against Ohio State, he struggled, and they lost. But look what's happened ever since then. They've won all 3 games. He's scoring more than 23 a contest. He's hitting 2/3 of the shots he puts up. His rebounds are remarkable. It's part of the reasons why Maryland is playing such good ball right now, and they're indeed in the hunt for a double bye in the Big Ten tournament. Our friends of the Journey now chime in with a look at Derik Queen.
When I first got hired, the rumble and the chatter was you have to go down and see 2 kids from Baltimore. But Derik was the one that we had to go down and see.
I'm from Baltimore, Maryland. Baltimore is very tough, like where I'm from. You have to be very cautious. My mom wanted me to come home as soon as the street lights come on. I started playing basketball like 6, 7 years old. 3rd, 4th grade is when I found the love of basketball. In 7th grade, I was getting better and better, and I was just better than everyone. I started at St. Francis Academy for 1 year. I was 16 when I went to Mount Verde in Orlando, Florida. Me going to Mount Verde, I was going to play against better people. The competition was going to be better. Winning coach and a coach that like been around NBA players.
It was the end of his sophomore year, and I remember kind of looking at him and being like, this kid's like a big teddy bear. Like, is he really what everyone talked up to him to be? When you're going after such a good player, you got to make sure that he's the right fit, that bringing him home is the right thing to do. So for us, getting to know him, for him to know us was really more important than the sell to stay home.
They made me a priority when they came down, like the first week when he first got the job. Got a few offers in 10th grade, but 11th and 12th grade is really when schools started to like offer me a lot. After my birthday, when I came up here after a game, and then I said I wanted to come to Maryland, but I wasn't 100% sure, so I waited until like February, 2 months later.
I think there's something great about staying home and playing, but there's also a definite learning curve about how many tickets you're going to give out, how often you're going to go home. There's a time management issue that when you have this many people around.
I feel like that tells a lot about Derik's character. Having a lot of highly touted schools and him just staying home and sticking with like where he's from and just putting on for his home crowd, and I feel like that's big.
I always had a really good feeling that he was going to come to Maryland. He always gave that vibe that he wanted to come home, wanted to play in front of his friends and family. He wanted to kind of make a really big impact, not only the university, but the state.
Coach Willard wearing a big hat was pretty funny because his head didn't fit in a big hat.
Derik, he's the one that put the hat on me. This is the picture I want for my commitment. I said, absolutely, absolutely, you can put anything on me as long as you commit.
Derik definitely is one of the only person that can get Coach to laugh. Puts a smile on his face a lot.
He can bust with the best of them, and he really knows how to do it. To kind of get on you in a way that most college kids don't understand.
Derik was kind of like the hometown kid, and he's just more comfortable at home. He was going home a lot, but we kind of got on him. Staying here and just working on his craft and just staying locked in was a big thing for him, and he started doing that, and that's when he started going crazy.
There's a lot of pressure when you bring in McDonald's All-American, the local kid, the pressure to make sure that he succeeds.
Brings the young freshman clean to the basket. Big time maneuver.
Most young kids play checkers when they're in college, which is as fast as you go, jump around, and Derik plays chess. He sees the game at a very slow rate. While the game's going fast, Derik just has an unbelievable feel for the game.
Derik Queen just ripping right down that seam. Queen can hurt you inside, and now he's hurting you from the outside.
He's an old soul in a young man's body. It's very rare.
The big fella has shown off pretty much every facet of his skill today.
I was always the tallest, but never the fastest. I don't jump as high as people, so I have to look at the game in a different view.
Queen on the offensive glass.
Basketball just makes me happy, and I wish I could play the game forever and just keep getting better at it.
I think put the cameras on him right here. It's on his first game. They ain't doing it like that.
What I've really enjoyed is the relationship I have with Derik. has been something like, hey, let's get this done for Derik Queen and let's get this done for the University of Maryland. He obviously wants to make it to the NBA, but he also wants to do it in conjunction with helping the University of Maryland. And I think that's what's made us really a good partnership.
It's a team, Trent, that's won 7 of their last 8. He's right in the thick of that Big Ten Freshman of the Year discussion. What do you see when you watch him play?
I see a newer version of Trevion Williams, who was so good in this league just a few years ago, but a player that has a lot of those same skills and feel for the game, but he's as good as Trevion was a great player. He's at another level, Derik Queen is. And it's interesting, he talked about he was never the fastest or jumped the highest. And sometimes that athletic ability can almost be a detriment because you rely on it. And we're seeing a young man who doesn't rely on jumping over guys. Now, I think his athleticism is really strong with his footwork, his hand. I mean, he's got elite feet and how he can move. But he's not a vertical athlete. He's not the fastest guy. And so I think he's developed as a player. He's developed his skills. He's developed the ability to play at different paces. And Coach Willard's comments of he plays chess, not checkers. There's not just many freshmen. There's not many juniors, seniors in college that I think process the game the way that a young Derik Queen does. So it's so impressive when you put that package of skills together. And his size, he's got great long arms. It's fun to watch. I love him probably the most, Mike, when he gets the ball in the perimeter and now he's going downhill to the basket. He gets into his footwork, his Euro step package. He can make decisions and plays for his teammates. He can finish around the rim with either hand. I'm just a really fun, gifted player to watch that sees things differently, and he's going to be a special pro, but we still got another month plus of him here in college basketball at least. And I'm looking forward to see what he does here to finish off his freshman campaign.
I mentioned the Big Ten Freshman of the Year race. He's in it. There's a handful. I mean, there's a lot of guys. Whoever's going to make that team is really the amazing cutoff, right? With Kasparas Yakachonis at Illinois and Jace Richardson. I mean, there's a bunch of guys. But do you have anyone ahead of Derik Queen right now, or is he your leader in that race?
Early on, I would have said it was Yakachonis. And then more lately, I would have said it's Ace Bailey. Right. And I thought that was kind of a done deal. And some of that was with Yakachonis with team success. With Bailey, it was just straight up individual brilliance. But now I think Derik Queen is right there in the mix with Bailey because he's doing it individually, but he's doing it on a team that's, they're in the 5th position now. They could get to one of those top 4 seeds. They can make a deep run in either tournament. And I think because of the team success matched with what he's doing individually, he's right there at the top, and I wouldn't be shocked if he is the Big Ten Freshman of the Year. But we still got some more basketball, so not to get ahead of ourselves, but he'll be right there in the end, I believe, Mike.
Well, let's test exactly how much you like this Maryland team. When we come back, we're going to talk about the very top. So here's a look at the top 4 teams in the Big Ten right now, and the schedules remaining. Now, to me, what stands out the most is there's a lot of numbers next to the teams for Michigan and for Michigan State. Only 1 for Wisconsin and 0 ranked teams left for the Badgers, but for the Boilermakers. The Boilermakers are 3 games behind the Wolverines in the loss column right now. Trent, when you look at these schedules, what stands out to you of just those top 4 teams right now?
Well, the biggest thing is the Michigan schools play each other twice. So I think that's fantastic. Those are 2 right at the top. And that we get to see them go up against each other twice because you don't play everyone twice. You don't play most teams twice. And so I'm really looking forward to that, especially 2 such very different brands of basketball and Tom Izzo, who's now the all-time winner in Big Ten games, versus Dusty May, who's just a newcomer to this league. So I'm looking forward to that game. Just overall, though, look, you play the schedule in front of you, and you catch teams at different times, and who knows always what you're going to get. Wisconsin didn't know Illinois was going to be banged up last night. You play who's in front of you. All these teams are playing well. I expect them to finish well. But, yeah, especially those 2 Michigan schools matching up 2 times here to finish the season, that's a treat for fans for sure.
If there wasn't a team in that top 4 that you think still has a chance to win the Big Ten, or at least make a lot of noise in these final couple weeks, which team would that be?
Well, that's easy, and we just highlighted Derik Queen, but Maryland Terrapins. I mean, they're 10-6, I believe 10-5, so they're just behind Purdue, half a game behind Purdue. They're right there. They won 7 of 8. They have, I think, an average schedule to finish out, but I look at more of how they're playing than who they're going to play next. And look at that starting 5. I know they're talked about quite a bit. They scored 95 points in their last outing against Iowa. The 3 guards hit 12 threes. Derik Queen's been playing great. We know what Julian Reese can do. He's done it at a high level for a long time. Those 3 guards can really go. Gillespie's shooting it over 40% from 3. So is Miguel. Rice shoots at high 30s. So they're all lethal. They can really score. And then defensively, Mike, all 5 of those guys, quickness across the board. They get after you defensively. They're hard to score against. They bring in guys like Gapari, Jay Young off the bench that are, have great speed and quickness as well. So on both ends of the floor, Maryland's playing really well. And I would be surprised if they're not in the top 4 in the Big Ten tournament.
There's a few other teams that I know you think could make some noise here. Let's start with UCLA. What do you expect from them in these final handful of games?
I may not expect them to be a top 4 team, but I know they lost last night. I know they only scored 27 points in the second half at home against Minnesota, but I just like their toughness. Mick Cronin has that team. They fight. They play together. They're not quite on Michigan State's level, but they play a lot of guys that are capable scorers. And so I like how they've been playing over the past month or so. They had won 7 games in a row after a point in the season where we thought they were done, that we thought they were heading south. Just 1-2 in the last 3, but I expect them to finish well. And I primarily say that because of their toughness and because of what they can do on the defense of the end of the floor. And I think they'll find enough offense to generate to be effective and win games to close out the season.
What about Nebraska? A team we mentioned earlier on has won 5 of the last 6 games.
Well, you have a guy, I love when you have a guy like Bryce Williams that can take over a game and so mature as a scorer and as a player that scores at all 3 levels. You can play through. I love that. Juwan Gary's played at a high level as well. But overall, this team, they have a professional approach, a mature approach. They really understand their game plans. They execute it on both ends of the floor defensively. They are a team that's really strong on the help side. They've done it for several years now. They make it difficult, especially if you have a go-to guy. They're really going to load up on the help side. So they're good on that end of the floor. And then they're able to just share the wealth and have different guys step up offensively. So playing at a good level, I expect them to be in the NCAA tournament again in a dangerous team once again here in March.
What about Ohio State?
Yep, Ohio State. They've split their last 6, so they've been a little bit up and down, Mike. But I like, their 3 guards, Bruce Thornton, Mobley, Parrish. When Michi Johnson went away, I think that it took them some time to get adjusted. But now those 3 are all playing well, and each of them are capable of going for 20-plus points any given night. They know their roles. They know what's expected of them, and those guys are really dangerous. I think they just need a little bit more consistency from the front court, but they're playing well defensively. They shoot the ball well, and I think they're going to break free a little bit here and stop splitting games. They got 3 to finish on. They have 3 on the road, so that will be tough. But I think their experience in their backcourt will help them finish strong.
Yeah, that includes Bruce Thornton, who, of course, can go off and drop a big scoring performance seemingly just about any day. Speaking of, on the women's side of things, we got something big coming your way. The Big Ten Women's Swimming and Diving Championships, they start today. They're happening in Columbus. You can see it all on Big Ten Plus. It's time to turn our attention now to someone who has made quite a big splash in her first year in the Big Ten, JuJu Watkins.
They go back to Watkins. She's getting everything in the bag. See the clear out again for Watkins. She just elevates and cashes in. Come on.
JuJu Watkins had an out of this world first half.
Betts Blocked again by Watkins, and then the assist. One of JuJu Watkins' signature performances.
She is perhaps the best player in the country, and she dropped 38 points with 8 blocks in the game against the #1 team in the country, giving UCLA their first loss ever. Here's a look at the women's schedule today. These first 2 games you can see on Big Ten Plus. That's Purdue at Minnesota and Oregon at Nebraska. JuJu Watkins and USC will play Michigan State in another ranked matchup. That game happens over on Peacock. And the reason we brought that up is because we were trying to think about JuJu's playing at this incredible level. Is there someone on the men's side who's playing like her? I'll stop you right now. No, there's not. But Trent, who are the people that come close to the JuJu level on the men's side?
But Mike, these guys do not come close. JuJu's on another level. I looked at 3 guys here that I think are really crucial to their team success and playing very well right now. And none of these guys, and I'm looking at Trey Holloman, Juwan Gary, and Jacoby Gillespie. None of these guys are at the top of the scouting report, but very important for the team's success. Starting with Trey Holloman. He had 14-3 recently against Illinois, 7 points, 6 assists last night against Purdue. Not monster numbers, but as a point guard, as a leader, he's doing it on both ends of the floor. Been very aggressive defensively. He's made tough shots on the offensive end of the floor, to the basket, from the mid-range, knocking down threes. He's been a guy, along with Jeremy Fears, but he gives them more offense that has been very, very good, playing at a high level at that point guard position. And then Juwan Gary. Of course, Bryce Williams is their guy, is Fred Hoiberg's guy, but 18 points in the last 8 games. He's shooting the 3 ball well. He defends. He rebounds. He does so much for Nebraska, and he's been consistent for them. I think that's what's so key. They're going to have some other guys that step up any given night, but he's been very consistent along with Bryce Williams, playing at a high level. And then my third will be Jacoby Gillespie. You know, he just went off for 26 points, 7 assists, 3 steals versus Iowa. He can get hot like that, but he's been, when I think of consistency, he's only had 1 game in the last 12 in single figures from a points standpoint. So he's been getting it done offensively. He's the guy that sets the table for this Maryland offense. There's so many weapons, but he's the one with the ball in his hands, making plays. He's had some big moments down the stretch. So those 3 guys, they are not JuJu Watkins, not even close, but playing, Mike, at a very high level and really a big part of their team's recent successes.
Yeah, I love pointing out Jacoby Gillespie. I mean, not only did he go off the other day, but he's hitting clutch shots in the closing minutes of multiple games. It seems it's always a drive. They need a bucket late. It's him driving the lane and scoring a layup. But yes, nobody's JuJu. She's averaging 24 points, 7 rebounds, almost 4 assists a game. But still, knowing that's not exactly a fair bar, give me a few guys in the final minute here who really do need to step up their game in these closing weeks.
3 guys for 3 teams right in the hunt. You know, Kasparas Yakachonis, 1 assist, 9 turnovers his last 2 games. He's going to have to be better for Illinois to play up their potential. Cam Heide, he hasn't scored in double figures since early December. He had 15 in a game against Maryland, but that shows, I think, what he's capable of. And I single out him because he's the guy that he's got experience, he's got ability, he can make shots, hit a couple threes last night. We'll see if that can carry over. Purdue will going to need 1 guy, and I think it could be Heide, to step up to finish the season. And then Devin Royal for Ohio State. He's had some big games recently. He had 26 against Michigan. He had 29 against Illinois. So some big games. But in between, Mike, he was in single digits. And why he's so important for Ohio State is earlier I mentioned their backcourt being such threats in Thornton, in Mobley, and Parrish. But their front court really does not have a guy that can score the ball at a consistent level besides Devin Royal. So he's shown it in some flashes. I just want him to be more consistent because he's got the full package offensively. So they're going to need him to step it up down the stretch. But all 3 of those guys, Yakachonis, Heide, Royal, if those guys are playing at a high level to finish the season, I think that bodes really well for those teams to finish out the year.
Yeah, and like we said at the beginning of the show, now's the time. Every game matters a little bit more when we're at the end of February and the beginning of March. Big Daddy Meach, as always, great stuff, man. Thanks for the last hour. I'm Mike Hall. We'll see you next time on Big Ten Today.